Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 2 of Be the Standard. I am your host, Denny Paul, and I'm joined again by my co host and best friend, Mike Burns. We appreciate you guys coming back, checking us out for episode 2. If you're listening for the first time, go ahead and check out episode 1. Hopefully, you like what you hear. And then come on back to episode 2, check us out again moving forward. Do us a favor. We appreciate your time and listening to us. Go ahead and like and subscribe to our podcast. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, as well as Rumble. We really do appreciate the support. We know that there's plenty of podcasts out there that you could be listening to. We appreciate your time being spent here with us. Um, as we kind of head into episode 2 here, one of the things that Mike and I kind of wanted to discuss was mindset, right? Um, and how you get into the right mindset and what it takes to develop that right mindset. We talk a lot about our key principles, our core values. About setting standards, creating unbreakable habits, execution, and then lastly, again, I'll say this over and over: the most important step, which is accountability. Executing on all those three things prior, and then holding yourself accountable because you know when you are and you know when you're not. Um, I think that in order to get to step 1, which is setting a standard for yourself, you have to be in the right mindset. You have to be in a place where you've decided that your current situation just isn't working, right? And it's time to get better. That can be in your personal life. You want to be a better husband. You want to be a better father. You want to be a better friend. Whatever the case may be. That can be professionally. Maybe you're in a position that's just not working for you, or maybe you want to be better at your job. It could be physical. You could decide that I'm just not where I want to be. With my physical fitness, I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way I feel, and it's just time for a change. Relationship wise, again, you can be a better husband, better wife, better boyfriend, better friend, whatever the case may be. But you have to be in the right mindset in order to get to that first step, which is setting a standard for yourself and deciding that um, it's time for a change in whatever aspect of life it is. Um, and in my opinion, I've always thought that you don't just wake up one day and decide that okay, it's time to get better. For me, and I talked about this a little bit in episode 1. Just with the upbringing that I had, I think that typically, and Mike, I'd like to get your perspective on this. I think it typically takes a qualifying event that's usually driven by some kind of a pain or a failure to say it's time for a change.
Yeah, it could be typically rock bottom of something. Like you feel like, oh man, I've really bottomed out here, and it kind of wakes you up to the situation you're in, and you realize you need to change. Or it might not have to be a rock bottom event. It could just be like, wow, something just really snaps you out of the way you were going and just made you really realize. And sometimes that just might be just the good circle of people you're around. They might help you do that.
Yep.
Or like you said, it's usually is a big pain or failure that you hit in your life, and then you find your way out.
Right.
So.
And I think us as veterans, I think we've seen it a ton, right? How many guys, or girls, you're just not in a good place in your life, so you turn to the military. You're like, what is the most drastic? Think about that.
Oh, right.
What is the most drastic change I can make in my life? To that I know if I do it properly, if I do it the right way, what can I do that's going to cause just the most drastic change and maybe has such a positive or has such potential to make me better.
So it's funny that you brought that up because as you were talking about all that, I really went back to exactly what my, almost like you said, qualifying event was for joining the military. And when I was younger, and I never would ever, even though both my mother and my father were both in the military, I was like, I'm never ever going to join the military.
And, I said the same thing.
And then I remember I was living in Whitensville, and then we had a recruiter out of nowhere kind of talk to us, and I was like, yeah, no, this is not for me. And this guy I know in our neighborhood, he was in the military. It still wasn't at all interested in it. And I literally hit this one day, and it wasn't really a rock bottom event, but it was definitely like an epiphany. So at this point, I've definitely dropped out of school, kicked out of school, kind of like a mutual understanding, like, hey, we both agree you don't want me here, I don't want to be here. So I'm just hanging out, drinking, really have no direction. And just one day, I'll never forget the day. I remember just sitting on my grandmother's porch and I was drinking all day or night, whatever, and looking up in the sky and like being like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It was literally just like a voice in my head said, hey, what are you doing? And then I was like, you know what? Maybe I should try this military thing. Yeah. And obviously not being all gung-ho, tried the guard first, and it obviously worked out well. Instead of going full active duty, but it was exactly what I needed at the time. And thank God it happened. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, very similar. Like I didn't have a rock bottom event either that drove me, I gotta go in the military because now I'm at rock bottom. It was a gradual, just like decline, right?
Right.
In just my performance and my I was like kind of at a point where I was like, where the hell, like who am I, right? Yeah. Just not in that right mindset at all.
That's exactly. I didn't recognize who I became. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I was just like. What am I? And I will say this is a regret of mine. Is like I did the same thing. I wasn't sure. I wasn't all gung ho about the military, but I knew it would be beneficial. I regret not going active duty. It was just diving in because and people don't understand this. Maybe it's different state to state, guard to guard. But at the time, with our unit deploying as often as it was as a guard unit, it's tough. Like they weren't just letting you go active duty. It was tough to get released from the guard back then to go active duty. And I remember I tried to do it, and it was like, no, we have Afghanistan coming up, and we need guys for that. So it was, and not to say that it couldn't have been done. I was fine at that point. I was like, all right, I'm going to deploy. I'm going to go with the people I know, the people I'm friends with. But it wasn't as easy as you would think to leave the guard, especially after they paid you a bonus. They paid off your student loans and helped you those financial ways.
Even pre 9/11, it was tough.
Was it?
Oh yeah, it's not easy. I mean, the state has you. Your body. They don't want to give it up. They don't have to. So,
yep. Yeah. So back to just the mindset thing and having a qualifying event. I think that for me, the pain of my childhood and the things that I kind of went through growing up, kind of put me in a position that I didn't really have much of a choice, but to have a particular mindset. It was either, look at the people in my life that were, doing drugs or drinking alcohol and all of these things and being mentally and physically abusive, or, you recognize that, fuck this, like that's the last thing I want, right? Like that's like, so for me, it was learning at a very early age exactly what I didn't want. And basically just running in the other direction and knowing that I needed to be different, and I'm sure, your background, you kind of felt the same way. I mean, I think I did carry some of that into adulthood, those things that you just don't even realize you're doing, but you do. And I think it's just important to recognize that and then kind of push yourself in that other direction.
Which is good because a lot of people, you become product of your environment. Like some people don't run away from it. They kind of just think this is what it is, and you know what you know, and that's all you know. And they kind of get sucked into it. I feel like we've been fortunate enough that we know this is not what I want, and you kind of got away from our situations. Similar. I kind of created my situation. I guess when I was younger. I kind of got, I moved away from my mother's house and lived in upstate New York, moved back to Massachusetts where I had very little, no supervision. Yeah. Just partied all the time, got thrown out of school, and then just had, drugs rolling around me. A lot of people getting addicted to heroin. My own uncles, it was crazy. And then you just start losing a bunch of friends to it, and then eventually, thank God you get away from it. You got to get away from that whole. Run away, like you said, like you run the other direction. A lot of people are not fortunate enough to do that or realize that you need to do that.
Yeah.
Because even when I first joined the Guard, I mean, people that know me way back to Private E1 Burns. I mean, I wasn't a stellar. Like I went to basic training, I was great. I was going to go. I came back, I was not that guy because I stayed in the environment that I was in. Yeah. You're always going to get drawn back into that. and it showed through in the guard. You know, got in a lot of trouble, went AWOL a bunch of times, and people don't know about this about me, but you know, I have some senior leadership had to pick me up out of jail and being like, "Hey, smarten up."
Yeah.
And luckily they could. I just wanted out. I was just a hot headed kid, and they didn't let that happen. You know, thank God. Who knows how my life would have turned out if they did.
Yeah.
They stuck with me. They kept me in, and you know, things eventually turned around. But not to get off subject here, Denny, but just to really, the only time I got better, honestly better, is when I got myself out of the environment that I was in. You can't be like, oh, I got this good mindset, I'm better than this, and stay in that environment, because you're always going to get pulled back down. Until you remove yourself from that environment, you're never going to grow.
Yeah, and that's regardless of what stage you're at in life or who you're with or whatever the case may be. Like, you are whatever you surround yourself with. And absolutely, you know, and one thing that millionaires do like to say is, you know, you hang out with 10 millionaires, you become the 11th, right? And you know, that might be a little bit drastic of a scenario or whatever, but I believe that. I believe that, you know, you surround yourself with the right people and good things are going to happen. I mean, I told the story in episode 1 about my journey and, you know, going back to school and getting my degree and going to Oracle. I surrounded myself with really great guys who worked at Oracle, right? And I was fortunate enough that they were willing to help me get it, you know, take the proper steps to get into the company.
So that's what I think a big thing. If you guys are some of our viewers or listeners listen, they're very young, and like that's something you learn definitely as you get older. That's why we talked about in episode 1, making your circle very, very small, because it matters, right? What you surround yourself is what you do become. Doesn't matter. I don't care. There's no exceptions. It is the way it is. And if you're younger and you know that, like, just start surrounding yourself with those people. People that will challenge you, grow you, pull you, you know, instead of people that are going to try to hold you back. And some people have great intentions. They you know, they don't realize they'll hold you back. But they do. So it's a good point when you're younger, and maybe if you're you know, my age or older and you need to hear this, but you know, it's definitely something I feel like you learn later in life, and I think luckily we learned earlier enough in life to kind of remove ourselves from situations.
Yeah, I mean, I say it all the time. It's important to keep a small circle. You know, you don't need opinions flowing from, you know, 10, 12 of the wrong people. You know, keep it small. Stay in touch with the right people. And I think that's what's most important. But back to, you know, mindset. You know, I don't think that that's necessarily something that's learned unless you're fortunate enough to, at least not learned by guys like us. I think that if, you know, you grow up in the right household, and maybe you have the right, you know, maybe you have a great father that has taught you all the right values, all of the, you know, how to act a certain way, manners, values, respect, integrity. You know, if you learn all those proper things, you can maybe that translates to developing, you know, the proper mindset. But you know, I know for myself, you know, growing up without a father, and you know, not even in my own home, you know, just, you know, adopted at a certain age, and then, you know, prior to that was foster care. So, you know, I never really had anybody kind of steering me in the right direction. But like I said previously, I kind of felt like I knew what I didn't want. Right. But I can think of as a kid, you know, watching, you know, certain movies, or like watching even like a Michael Jordan interview and pulling quotes, like just quotes about like toughness and not quitting and, you know, things like that, and just trying to on my own just apply those to life scenarios. Like, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I'll literally try to like just pull words from different places and quotes and things that kind of I thought were inspirational, and just apply them to my life. Like, you know, maybe I shouldn't be acting like a jerk off in school, or, you know, maybe I shouldn't, you know, be getting into fights every fucking day.
So not to get off topic with that, but it just really talks about how words matter, and especially when I didn't realize this till later on in my career, you know, in the military, being a senior leader, like the words you say to people, they will remember, right? And because you don't realize the influence or the stature you have, and then sometimes when they come back and tell you something, usually it's a good thing. You're like, oh man, hopefully I never said like the wrong thing, to somebody and like steered them the wrong way. So I think a good lesson learned is just the words, like just really what you're talking about as a younger person, you took words from people you idolize, right? And you use it as fuel.
Yeah.
It goes the other way as well. So you got to really be careful. I feel if you're in a position of influence and power,
Oh, 100%.
and what you say to people, because it definitely does matter.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, you said it about in regards to the military. I think it's most important there. I mean, if you're somebody in the military, I mean, people see your rank and automatically they don't know anything about you other than what they see in your rank. So they think you have influence, right? Or you have influence just based off of that, because you know people see rank as accomplishment. So you know, I'd be like an E3, E4. I see an E7, E8, and I'm like, okay, you know, and I'm gonna hang on to every word that guy says because ultimately, like, I'm looking, or you're looking as a younger soldier to them, you know, in regards for guidance, and yeah, and you're looking to them for your own development. So yeah, it's very important, and
I think that translates to any position you are in life. If you have any kind of influence, and you just might be a father, you might just be a good friend. Like sometimes you got to just be careful in how you choose your words, and don't haphazardly just kind of like throw things out there sometimes. But,
yeah, for sure.
But I just really I know I went off on a tangent there, but really just the words that words matter, and like how you can just pick up on something and really kind of go with it. You know, I think that's cool. I never experienced that, but hearing you talk about it's pretty cool. You heard something and you really held on to it and you went after it.
Yeah, it's just like it's hard to explain because I just like when you're a young kid and you kind of like don't have the guidance, but you know what you don't want. Like for me, it was very easy to identify like what I didn't want. Right? Like I've never even tried a cigarette. Like I've never tried a drug. Like I just, but everybody in my family, I come from drug addicts. I come from everybody in my family smokes. You know, everybody like, you know, so it was really easy for me to figure out what I didn't want in just pushing myself in another direction and trying to surround myself. Even at a young age, I would try to surround myself with just people that I thought were better than me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People that had, you know, a good dad. People who, you know, had nice families and, you know, came from some normalcy. Because I didn't know what that looked like. But when I would see it, I'd be like, okay, that's what I should be. That's what I should be looking at.
I think you were very in tune then as a younger adult. I definitely didn't think that way.
I don't know. I think I picked up on things as a kid. Like I don't think I think I blocked out a lot of emotional type shit, but I think I knew how to like identify what I wasn't comfortable with and what I didn't want.
Yeah.
Not that I necessarily knew how to at that age how to go get what I wanted. I just knew what I didn't want.
Well, I think
I knew it didn't look right.
That's huge. I think that's that's a lot of it, right?
And I think certain things like when it comes to like the more extreme things like the drugs and
of course
the violence and different things like that stuff is easy. And I do think that I kind of took with me, you know, into early adulthood you know, just the mediocrity of things. Like, you know, it's okay to make 40, 50 grand a year. It's you shouldn't it shouldn't be a big deal to want more, right? Or you shouldn't necessarily be striving for more. You should just be content. Like you have a roof over your head, you have clothes on your back, you have food in your stomach. You know, I think I kind of took on the attitude that okay, that's okay into my early 20s, and I was like, I think I'm capable of more. Right. And then again, these qualifying events, like I go back to how I started this episode. You know, I do think it takes qualifying events or gradually heading in a certain direction to put you on this path of like this isn't working and I need to change, right? I think, you know, and I just think that it takes a qualifying event, to get in the proper mindset, to go on, to do the things that. All right, so now that we've kind of touched upon mindset and things like that, I'm going to move on to, you know, just something that, you know, came up the other day at the gym. We were talking and he said, you know, what do you do for rest? And he asked me about, you know, do I schedule my rest? You know, when do I rest? What day do I rest actually is what he said. And so, you know, obviously I think that rest is necessary, right? You got to rest physically, with your fitness. You got to rest, you know, from your work throughout the day. You need a break. You know, even your personal life, home, you need your your girl time, your guy time, whatever. So obviously that stuff's important. I think most people, they schedule their rest, which means, they're scheduling their days off from the gym throughout the day. They're scheduling, all right, it's 1 o'clock. I need to take a break. They schedule their time to be away from their spouse, their significant other, whatever the case may be. I think that, something for me is that for me, rest isn't a scheduled event. Um, when it comes to my fitness, I rest when my body tells me to. When it comes to work, I rest when my brain needs it. I'm just curious to know your thoughts on that. You're very in tune to fitness and wellness. Um, so I'm just curious to know from your perspective, like, am I overworking myself? Am I overthinking myself? Like, what are your thoughts on
No,
that?
I don't think so at all. I think you got a good. I think you kind of nailing it with this. From my point of view, obviously, I'm not putting any science behind this. I'm not going to try to be that guy, but I think life's unpredictable, and if you try to, there's some people they're very regimented. I mean, they don't get through their day if it's not scheduled out to the T and their
Sure,
rest and all this stuff.
sure,
But things with them, what if something happens, right?
right.
So say you had a scheduled rest day on Thursday, but then something,
Hmm.
Wednesday something happened, you had to rest. And now,
Right.
you know what I'm saying. So I like what you're saying, and if you got something going, go for it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
especially you're talking about work related. Like if there's fire in the kitchen, like let's get some cooking done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So let's get
Yeah.
it done, because you never know. You just don't know.
And that's why I approach it that way. I think life's gonna tell you, like your body's gonna tell you,
Yeah,
right?
I'm a big firm believer on that. To a point. I mean, so I do think some people like they're like they can get really obsessed and they don't recover and they could do better. But
Yeah.
if that's what they need mentally, then who
Yeah.
cares? You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, I agree with you. That's the perspective I take as well. If you got something going, work hard. Just keep working till it's done. You schedule rest days. I've never done that. I mean, you might have an idea,
Yeah.
but life's gonna throw that right away. It's
Exactly.
gonna be like no.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just curious your perspective on that, just because I've been asked that question by a lot of people who, are either gonna get into working out or, maybe don't work out as much as they'd like or whatever the case may be. So I was just curious to know what you thought about that.
So all right. So I digress. So that's a different thing. If I have somebody, obviously a new athlete comes in, starts working out, I'm going to make sure they're not overworking. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because they do need that recovery time. They do need to get better. They need to, and it's easy for someone because obviously I'm come from the CrossFit background, so I could relate to that the best.
Sure.
Someone comes in and they just want to, they get super excited when you get into something new and
Yeah.
CrossFit's exciting and they just want to do it every day. And it's like, listen, like, you gotta
Mhm.
give yourself a day off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Come into the gym. You don't have to I don't think you need to keep yourself away from the gym. Like, I like going to the gym, be around people like that.
Yeah.
The community's great. But I think when you're first starting off, you definitely it should be more deliberate. So
Mhm.
I'll back off what I was kind of saying there with a newer person.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Like, especially like when you're doing those hit workouts, as you call them, like
Well,
you're
I don't call them that. You call them that.
maybe I
Yeah,
just call them.
you're out of the CrossFit world.
Yeah,
CrossFit, you
yeah,
don't call them hit
I
workouts.
used to be a CrossFitter
Yeah.
for a few years. But no, but when you are pushing your body to that extreme, I mean, I can remember looking back on the CrossFit days and being like, after every workout, like I am just done. Like, you lay down and the pool of sweat is on the floor.
Yeah.
And then you lay down
I,
and this in your back.
I almost always
Your back
refuse to lay on
muscles
the
are.
ground. So I think it's a mental thing. I don't think most people
Mhm.
need to. I think it's given in at the end. You want to do it. I think it's fine. But there's been very few times, and maybe I don't push myself hard enough
I've done it. I've definitely done it.
that I'll be
I won't say I've done it every time, but I've done it.
But so
There have been some
let's clear this up to our viewers and listeners that you shouldn't be pushing yourself to high intensity every single time you do it. I know you do, and this is why you come back into CrossFit and you'll be wasted and you're like, I'm not doing that again. It's like, Denny, because you got to take it easy the first time. That's like it's a type A personality. It's hard to do that, but it's something you got to learn.
Yeah.
Especially as we get older, you try to get back into something like that. You take a break, it'll it'll beat you down. So people who don't know CrossFit, don't listen to him. You don't want to go high intensity every single time. That's for sure.
I won't even argue that. Like he probably shouldn't listen to me. I'm just not that smart. I just overdo it with those types of workouts. But I mean, just don't enjoy it. They're fun.
Oh, they're great. I mean, that's what works for me. So everyone's got the thing that works for them, right? Like I know we were talking about rest cycles, but CrossFit is just something that just worked for me. The regular weightlifting, traditional weightlifting, never did it for me. And then once I found CrossFit on our last deployment, senior chief out there with this CrossFit, and then it was game over for me. And that would be a whole other episode on its own when I talk about that. So I'm not going to go.
That was impressive though, how you came home. Like I was shocked. Not like
I went down the rabbit hole hard. Yeah,
I kept doing it, but I did it for maybe a couple of years, and not even close to the same, intensity or.
Well, what it did for me more is like it completely changed who I was.
Yeah.
My personality. Once I got into it, I was like, oh, this is I fell in love with the method. I fell in love with the workouts overseas, came back and fell in love with the methodology. Once I got into a CrossFit gym, I fell in love with the community. Yeah. It really changed me as a person. Yeah. And then it was all over from there. But again, I could waste a whole episode talking about that. But that's just me. So that's why I went so hard in that because it's just everything for me. It resonated with me, and it's not for everybody. Right. So, but for me, it was.
Right. Yeah. And back to like more just mental rest, right? Sometimes your brain just needs a break. And I just I'm the type of guy where like I start a presentation, 3 hours go by, and I'm like, okay, wow, holy shit, my day. Where like I was supposed to take a break. Like I should have taken a break at the start. But I don't really rest my brain until I'm foggy. Like what is it that pushes you to that point? Like when do you feel like whether it's the firehouse or you're running one of your gyms, or you must get to that point sometimes where you're like, all right, mentally I just need to like get up, take a walk.
So you do a lot more mental stuff in your line of work, right? But I've definitely gone into even menial tasks for me, and I will work it till I can, till it's perfect. And something just popped in my head as you were talking about that, because presentations isn't a big thing that I deal with, but I remember planning missions overseas. Yeah. I remember one time I was up till like 1, 2 in the morning. I wanted to get this mission brief perfect because, I would go and go and go and go, and I would just not stop till it was like, for me, till I thought it was perfect. Yeah. Just so I could really deliver the product good to everybody. But yeah, so I'm the same as you. I think this is why I think we're very similar. If I got something, I'm gonna go until tracer burnout. I'm gonna get pretty close. Yeah. But do I identify that? Of course. I mean, like, I think, if you got good people around you, hopefully they identify it for you. You might not even know. You might be like, man, like, hey, Denny, you need to take a break, bro. Let's go do something. Let's go decompress, whatever that may be for you, whatever your outlet is, or maybe it's just to turn your brain off for a little bit. But I think more with the mental like work. Like I know you do like a lot of what you do is mental work. So
yeah, a lot of presentations, a lot of stuff like that, and just putting together PowerPoints and whatever. But yeah, I get fried, and I just don't understand when people are like, yeah, all right, I gotta go take my break, it's time. And I think sometimes you can pull yourself out of the potential of doing your best work by doing that. So just something I wanted to touch upon briefly. But I was just curious about that.
Yeah, that's my thoughts on it as well.
All right, so as a recap, we touched upon a couple of things today. We talked about mindset. We talked about rest. Again, Mike and I are just talking from our own perspective. We're not preaching to you. We're not talking at you. We're simply just talking about things that we know that work for us. So, for example, if you need more rest, take it. We're not telling you to overexert yourself or anything like that.
Definitely, there's no science here. We're not preaching science to you, but like, oh, you need to do 3 and 1 or 4 and 2 and whatever.
Right. Do what works for you, and we're here to help and guide us any way possible. Again, guys, most importantly, we want to make sure that this is interactive. So please hit us up on our message boards, DM us, whatever the case may be. Ask questions. Tell us what you want us to talk about. We're happy to provide our perspective in any areas that might be of interest to you. So use us as a resource, and again, please just be interactive. That's kind of the whole the goal here. Thanks for listening. Go ahead and make sure that you like and subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Rumble, and Spotify. Also, don't forget to follow us on our Instagram pages. Be the Standard Podcast for the business. Denny_Paul12 is my personal, and then Mike's is Mike Burns1. And then lastly, don't forget to follow us as well on LinkedIn. The business page is Be the Standard Podcast. Again, we know that you guys can be listening to a million different podcasts out there, so we appreciate you taking the time to spend it with us, and appreciate your support. We'll see you again next week. Thanks, guys.
Don't forget, be the standard.
That's right.